Greetings for the day, dear friends, colleagues. Today we are going to deliberate, discuss on the very important topic, that is ESG BRSR report. Now, what is this ESG? ESG stands for Environment, Social and Governance, and BRSR stands for Business Responsibility Sustainability Report. So under the CB guidelines, that is Security Exchange Board of India, each industry had to report the BRSR report for the financial year 22-23, and most of the industries has reported for the financial year 22-23. Now the industries is preparing to report for financial year 23-24. Now what this BRSR report consists of? Now this BRSR report consists of total 9 principles. So under this 9 principle, the required information has to be filled. That is the BRS report. Now today we are going to discuss only the principle 6 of this BRSR report. Now what is this principle 6? We will see in detail. Now the principle 6 of the BRS report is known as the heart of this report. Maximum audit will be happening, or more focus will be on this principle 6. So what this principle 6 says? It says that respect and make efforts to protect and restore the environment. So it speaks that not only about the protection of the environment, but the restoration of the environment should be also kept in mind by the industries. Now various parts of this principle 6 are: implement drives for reduction in energy intensity from the previous financial year, implement drives for reduction in water intensity for the previous financial year, implement drives for reduction in scope 1 and scope 2 and scope 3 greenhouse gas emission intensity from previous financial year, and initiate fuel substitution project such as coal to briquette and furnace oil to pipe natural gas. So now we are going to see the first part of this principle 6. Now under this principle 6 there are two indicators: essential indicators and leadership indicators. Now essential indicators are mandatory. Here the industry has to report under the essential indicator, and under indicators it is voluntary, whether you want to report or you don't want to report. But under essential indicator, the industry has to report is mandatory. Now under this essential indicators, the first part is the energy consumption. It should be in the joules or multiples, maybe gigajoules. And you have to calculate the energy intensity. That will the metrics for monitoring of the energy consumption drives. So this table you will see, the column first is the parameters, and the two columns are to be reported for financial year 22-23 and the financial 21-22. So the first row is for total electricity consumption as A. Now whatever the annual energy consumption has happened or consumed, that has to be reported. But usually the industries fail to understand that the reporting has to be done in multiples of joules or joules, that is gigajoules, not in kilowatt hours. So if you are having the kilowatt hours, you have to convert with applicable formula to gigajoules, and you have to report it for the both the year, that is present financial year and previous financial year. Second part is total fuel consumption in B. So whatever the fuel inside the premise is being consumed, that may be high speed diesel, HSD, maybe furnace oil, or low sulfur high stock fuel or LPG or PNG, whatever the fuels are being consumed, that has to be converted by particular formula in gigajoules, and that has also to be reported for the both the years. Now, apart from these two, there is energy consumption through other sources, basically C. So these other sources may be like, example I would give is agricultural biomass, that is briquettes. So basically briquettes has not to be reported in A or B, but it has to be reported in this C. So it should be reported both the financial, it has to be also reported in the gigajoules. Now total energy consumption, that is the summation of A plus B plus C in gigajoules, for both the years you have to calculate. Now comes the energy intensity per rupee of a turnover. This is a very important metrics for further monitoring regarding the various initiatives done by the industries. So the energy intensity is to be calculated. The total energy consumption A plus B plus C divided by annual turnover of the companies. So you will get the energy intensity for both the years. So you have to use summation of A plus B plus C divided by annual turnover of that particular year. You will get energy intensity for that year, and for previous financial year also energy intensity you will be the summation of energy consumption A plus B plus C divided by turnover of that particular previous year, then you will get energy intensity for that year. So you can compare the energy intensity what was last year, what is the present. From this you will start monitoring and control. Another row they have given is energy intensity optional. So most of the industries may have other metrics, that energy per kg, then you can utilize this also. Now we'll see next, essential indicators. This is provide details of the following disclosure related to water in the following format. So the water consumption done by the industry for the process, utilities or green coverage has to be declared in this. So the unit is very important. Whatever the water consumption has been done is to be reported in kiloliters, KL. So first is surface water. If at all the industry is using the surface water, then you have to report it for both the years, annual consumption. Then groundwater, that is borewell or dug well, then you have to report for both the financial year. Third party from industrial corporations, if at all industry is consuming, for in Maharashtra Industrial Development Corporation has provided the industrial area, so then you can report for both the year. Then if you at all you are using seawater or desalinated water, then you have to report for the 2 years in kiloliters. And others, many of time the industrial association, industrial corporations are failed or due to their shutdown, the industry has to rely on some other source. So they usually call as tanker water consumption. Then you can report the in others for both the financial year. So the total volume the wastewater withdrawal done by the industry will be the summation of 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 in kiloliters. So the summation will come here for both the years. Now water intensity has to be calculated per rupee of the turnover. How to calculate? The summation of this year divided by the turnover of the company, annual turnover of the company, you will give the water intensity for that financial year. Similarly, for the previous financial year, you have to use the water consumption for the annual water consumption for previous financial divided by the annual turnover of that previous financial year. You get the annual water intensity. So you will get intensity, water intensity for present financial year, current financial year and past financial year or previous financial year. And this you will see the comparison whether you have increased, the water intensity is increasing or decreasing, and based on there you can devise various methodologies to reduce the water consumption. Then optional is given water intensity. The industry, if at all, is relying on whether other metrics like water intensity per kg of the product, then you can also utilize this row. Now the third essential indicator is the air emissions. So please provide the details of air emissions other than greenhouse gases. So here air emissions other than greenhouse gases the industry has to report. Now these are the basically emissions happening from the chimneys or stacks, that is boiler stack and the process stack, the scrubbers. So the parameters are oxides of nitrogen, oxides of sulfur, particulate matter especially from the boiler. Then from scrubbers you have persistent organic pollutants, POPs, volatile organic compounds, VOCs, hazardous air pollutants, HAP or others. So the particular units have been given, either ppp or ppm or kgs per day, milligrams per m cube, milligrams per m cube. So this has to be again converted into metric tons, which is not shown here, but it is expected by them to convert this all into metric tons, and then you have to report. And then you can calculate the intensity, air emission intensity, by using the formula like previous, the summation of all this divided by total turnover, you will get the emission intensity, air emission intensity for both the years. Now comes under the essential indicators scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. So greenhouse gas emissions scope 1, scope 2 and its intensity. So in this table, total scope 1 emissions has to be reported in metric tons of CO2 equivalent. Now scope 1 emissions are nothing but the all fuel consumptions plus fuel consumption for canteen plus fuel consumption for vehicles, that is company owned vehicles or outsourced vehicles, that all will come into scope 1 emissions. So you have to calculate this all in liters and you have to convert after applying appropriate formula into metric tons of CO2 or equivalent and report it for both the financial year. Then scope 2 emissions, that is basically the electrical consumption. So this also has to be converted into metric tons of CO2 equivalent and you have to report for both the financial year. Now the intensity, emission intensity for scope 1 and scope 2 per rupee of turnover. So for both the years you have to use the summation of the scope 1 and scope 2 divided by annual turnover of that company for the current year. You will get the emission intensity for that current financial year and previous financial year. Now apart from this, they have given optional any other emission intensity metrics the industry want to use, you can utilize this row. Then under the essential indicators comes the total waste generated. That has to be, that is under waste management. So total waste generated has to be reported in metric tons for both the current financial year and previous financial year. So they have given the plastic waste, e-waste, biomedical waste, construction and demolition waste, battery waste, radioactive waste or other hazardous waste. Then you have to report in metric ton for each of these entities for both the years. Then non-hazardous waste total summation has to be reported for both the financial year. Then comes the waste recovered to recycling, reusing or other recovery operation. This also has to be reported in metric tons. Means industry, the waste whether the industry has recycled back into the operations, then you have to report here in metric tons. If they have reused, then also you have to report for both the year in metric ton, or any other recovery operations, then you have to mention for both the financial year. Then comes the waste generated and total waste disposed by nature of disposal method. So as we all know, the disposal methods are to incineration and landfilling. So that has to be reported in metric tons. So if at all it goes to incineration to the approved government side, then you have to report it for both the years, current financial year, past financial year, landfilling in metric ton, current financial year, previous financial year, and if at all there is other disposal measures, then you have to report for both the years. Then next comes under the leadership indicators. This is voluntary, but you have to report, it is better. you have to give the energy intensity for renewable energy and non-renewable energy. So in renewable energy, we all know the sources like solar energy, wind energy, hydel energy. This comes under the renewable energy. So whatever the energy electricity consumption has been done from the renewable sources, that has to be reported in this row for current financial year and previous financial year. Then comes the fuel consumption. Here it is bit confusing, but nothing to confuse. Here they are expecting, if at all, using the biofuels. So biofuel has been categorized under the renewable source. If you are using biofuel, then you have to report the consumption for both the years. Then energy consumption to other source. Apart from this, above to any other source, then you have to report it. Then you have to calculate the summation of all the electricity consumption, fuel consumption, and other sources. Then comes the non-renewable resources, which we have already seen in first slide. So I will not go through this. Then comes under the leadership indicator is the water discharge, the wastewater discharge, basically treated wastewater discharge. So you have to declare this in kiloliters as per the destination. There you have given some 5 destinations of discharge. If at all you are discharging to surface water, then you have given 2 categories: with treatment, no treatments, without any treatment, or with treatment. Then you have to report accordingly for both the years. Second, if you are discharging to groundwater without treatment, with treatment, you have to report for both the years. To seawater, if you are discharging without treatment, with treatment, for both the years you have to report in kiloliters. If you are discharging to third parties, that is common effluent treatment plants, without treatment or with treatment, you have to report for both the years. Or any others sources, without treatment or with treatment, you have to report in kiloliters, and you have to then calculate the total discharge, that is the summation of all the sources. Then comes the leadership indicators, that is scope 3 emission and calculating its intensity. Now this is one of the important but as well as tedious or challenging scope. So scope 3 emissions you have to report in metric tons of CO2 equivalent for both the year, current financial year, previous financial year. Now what is the scope 3 emissions? So basically it is nothing but the upstream fuel consumption utilized on the logistic for procurement of the consumables, raw materials or fuels. So whatever the fuel has been consumed for the transportation, you have to utilize it. That is the upstream. And similarly for the downstream, whatever the downstream, that is the you have once you have manufactured the product, you have to send it to the consumers, to the dealers. So whatever the fuel is used for the transportation of your finished product to the dealers, distributors or consumers, so all the logistic fuel consumption you have to utilize in this scope 3 emissions. Here after arriving it has to be converted in metric tons of CO2 equivalent and reported. Then calculating the emission intensity of scope 3 per rupee of turnover. So whatever your metric tons of CO2, you have to divide that by annual turnover, then you will get the scope 3 emission intensity per rupee of turnover for both the years. Then there are given emission 3 intensity optional, either any other metrics if the industry wants to utilize, you can utilize here. Then this is the last and the most important leadership indicator. If the entity has undertaken any specific initiatives or used innovative technologies or solutions to improve resource emission or reduce impact due to emission, effluent discharge, waste generated, please provide details of same as well as outcome of such initiatives. So here industry has to utilize it meticulously. I would say minor any savings, energy intensity or technology utilized has to be highlighted, because in the audit, external third party audit, it will going to be happen in subsequent time. So they will see the various initiatives used by the company to under the resource saving. So you have to utilize this. For example, if at all you have used VFDs on energy consumption, so how much it is a saving, that you have to mention in quantification. Similarly, wastewater. Wastewater utilized for green coverage. Whatever the saving is in quantification, you have to report here. So such initiatives you are expected to report here. And finally, the last and important, that is thank you. Thank you for patiently listening to my video, and I request you to watch my videos. I will be preparing various videos, so keep on watching and subscribing my channel, and thank you once again.